So listen, I've watched a lot of reality TV over the last 5 years, and I've never heard a single individual talk about their spleen more times than Patrick in Love is Blind UK Season 2. I mean, mamma mia. I don't even know where my spleen is, but this dude says he gets an instinct from it. What are we watching? Grey's Anatomy or Love is Blind? What's going on? What's going on, you guys? James here with another real recap and review for Love is Blind. This time, we're going to the UK for Season 2 of Love is Blind UK. I'm really excited, guys. I've never watched Love is Blind UK, but some of you told me that, hey, James, you watch a lot of Love is Blind US. Try the UK. So I'm giving it a shot. Thanks so much, Netflix, for giving me week 1 early for review. Now, listen here. I'm hoping I get weeks 2, 3, and 4. So if that is the case, I'll be reviewing and breaking it down here on the channel. So hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, like this video, and get loud in the comments below. I need to know, you guys, what you think of episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4, because that is week 1. Who's your favorite? Who's your least favorite? I've got a least favorite. I'll tell you that much. Now, unsurprising to me, of course, the hosts here were surprisingly better than Love is Blind US. I'm not saying the Lachey's have been terrible the last 2 seasons. They've gotten better. But man, overall, they're not very good. And Matt and Emma Willis, they're more mild-mannered. They don't do anything extravagant, but they're just like, welcome. You all look fit. This is a proper show. Isn't it? All right, I'm going to stop. But if you are unfamiliar with Love is Blind and you're wondering what the heck is this show, basically you have singles coming together. They have a men's living quarters and a women's living quarters. They got pods where they date without seeing each other and they test the question, is love truly blind? They get engaged, they go on this getaway, they go back home, and will they say I do at the altar or not? We're gonna take this ride on together, guys, because there are some things. It's funny, the show kind of starts like a little and then the drama kicks in. So this is a good time to get into my spoiler-free thoughts. As always, there are time codes below for you to skip ahead if you don't care about my spoiler-free thoughts and you want to hear the tea and my breakdown and thoughts on the spoiler-filled side of this recap. But for now, if you haven't watched it, it's okay. Just watch this section, save this video, and come back later. But we're getting right into my spoiler-free thoughts. And we're going to start with this. Immediately, I noticed that this is a very tame version of Love is Blind. I mean, compared to Love is Blind US, this is just like, you know, so pleasant. Even the moments where they're like, I'm moving on, I have a deeper connection, it's not full of drama. Instead, it's like, I have a deeper connection. Okay, good luck. Best of luck. Goodbye. Have a great day. I'm not doing a British accent. I'm not going to offend anybody. But it is very proper. That's a word I was hearing a lot. That and fit. I thought fit was like muscles, but like fit is something else apparently. But for those viewers who are looking for a little bit of drama, you really don't get much of that in Season 2 until the Katisha love triangle and maybe a little bit of drama with Aanu, which we're going to dive into because let me tell you, Aanu and the person she was seeing, I'm like, listen. But I did find that while there wasn't much drama, you know, there were some decent bits of technical aspects to week 1. I don't know, guys, is this the norm in terms of the production value? Because it is much higher. Immediately I noticed it was much higher for Love is Blind UK versus Love is Blind US. It's like shooting with a Canon or shooting with an iPhone 11. However, I did find that the editing was a little rocky in the pod moments. I get what they're trying to do. They're rushing to the couple's getaway in Cyprus, right? But there were moments where you have a pod date between 2 contestants like Katisha and another person. I don't want to say who because, again, spoiler-free thoughts. And then it just cuts to another pod date that they have and they have different outfits. And I'm like, whoa, there was no establishing shot. There was no transition. It just happened. And I didn't love that too much. And it happened a couple times. And it does take you out of the experience. But you guys know me. When it comes to the music in Love is Blind, especially in Love is Blind US, I can't stand it. However, the music is somewhat more tolerable here in Love is Blind UK versus the US. At least it's like tolerable generic pop instead of Love is Blind US, which is literally picking songs that describe everything as it's happening on screen. Like Javen is eating a toast. And then Damola and... Oh, actually, we'll get into that later. But yeah, I'm telling you guys, the music is at least better in Love is Blind UK. And lastly, my last note I have for these spoiler-free thoughts, I will say, on the topic of lacking drama, the men's and the women's living quarters felt a little weird. There was like a disconnect between the contestants. They didn't really spend much time in there either. So I'm almost wondering if there wasn't a lot to televise, maybe nothing interesting. And that's been my guess from the jump, at least with season 2 of Love is Blind UK. A lot of things did not make the cut because maybe they weren't just very interesting. And that's not great, but it's also understandable. So hopefully the middle portion of the season and all the way to the finish line at the weddings is a little bit juicier. You know what I mean? Okay, Love is Blind fam, it's time now to get into my spoiler-filled recap and review of week 1. Now listen, if you have not seen season 2's beginning yet, you need to just pause it here, subscribe, but pause it here, and then come back after you've watched, because I'm curious to hear your thoughts, because you're getting all of mine right now. So we're starting with Ashleigh and Billy. Man, it's not that they were boring, but it's like they were boring. I don't know. Okay, let's start. They hit it off early, and I could tell this was going to be the couple that was most likely going to get engaged first. And, spoiler alert, they did. But they had some things in common, like there was a military background in common they talked about, and Billy was once married and then got a divorce. Ashleigh didn't seem to care about that, but they started, I guess, running out of things to talk about. But they got onto the topic of appearances. And then Billy was like, yeah, I've got some tattoos. I'm like, dude, no, this is the goal of the show. It's not to talk about your appearance at all. And he did it. So I didn't love that. I really didn't love that. And that's something that happens in Love is Blind US as well. But they seem to be falling for each other very, very early on. And then they had some challenging conversations come up because Billy reveals that he's dated flight attendants in the past and it hasn't worked out, which made him really nervous. So Billy said that in a testimonial interview, and then he went and he told Ashleigh straight up in the pods. And he said, I've dated cabin crew before, which also was funny because cabin crew sounds so much better than flight attendant. Cabin crew sounds like, yeah, I'm in the thick of things, like I'm building these engines. But Billy tells Ashleigh, like, I don't know, this makes me nervous. I don't know if we can overcome this. And then like in the blink of an eye and snap of a finger, he's like, oh, maybe I can overcome this. And they just move forward. I'm like, wow, they've moved on very quickly from that. That seemed like a very important moment. But maybe they had some things they cut out in editing in the final product. What I did find really weird is that he went from talking about almost dumping her to then talking about the physical connection they have again. And I'm almost nervous that this is not a sure foundation for them both. But Ashleigh says, listen, Billy, I'm falling for you. And Billy, I'm your girl. And Billy at that point was just like, well, I got a sure thing. Might as well. I'm trying to win this thing. Even though they don't win anything. They just win a marriage. But Billy eventually comes to his senses and says, okay, this is my only real connection here. And I'm going to start to get closer to getting on one knee for you. And it was funny because during one of the challenges, they had to wear these pink bedazzled cowboy hats. And Billy started tearing up talking about her and his love for her. And I was like, okay, you said you love her already? And that was the moment where I thought, okay, this is moving maybe too fast for them. But again, it's Love is Blind. You're in the pods for like, what, a week? So yeah, Ashleigh says, I love you too, Billy. And they're riding off into the sunset together. Well, they will. Well, maybe. So those are the pod moments for Ashleigh and Billy. And now it's time to get into the pod moments for Patrick and Aanu. And let me tell you something, okay? Listen, it ain't no secret. I love Jesus, all right? And I love that Aanu spoke about how she is a Christian and she prays and about her relationship with God. And I thought that was cool. She's in her word. That's awesome. Patrick, on the other hand, he ain't. So my first thought was, well, Patrick's talking about how he's into spirituality and his energies and the vibes and the high vibrations and low vibrations and all that. And I'm not here to judge no one. But being a Christian, you got to be equally yoked in a relationship, y'all. If you're not, it ain't going to work, okay? So Patrick and Aanu somehow hit it off, even with them talking about how they have differences in their worldviews. So I'm like, okay, interesting. Aanu does begin to ask some serious questions and some moral questions in a way where she asked Patrick, would you wait until marriage for sex? And he said no, but that he would consider it if maybe Aanu wanted him to wait. What am I saying here? Again, the whole equally, just keep that in mind. Just keep it in mind. So I still don't think at this point it's going to work out, but they keep trying. They really are trying. Aanu, again, is just reaffirming the fact that, yeah, I'm leaning on Jesus here. I'm a Christian. And Patrick is like, I'm not. So it's just, the signs are there, y'all. The signs are there. Patrick surprisingly tells Aanu in the pods that, well, she's his number one. And then, to my big surprise, she says, same. Same what, Aanu? Same setting? We're in the same setting in the pods? No, she meant, like, I feel the same way. And I'm like, wow, really? And then they get on the topic of their talents and their abilities, and Aanu does say something that caught my eye, which was that she sometimes plays down her singing ability. And this was a very key part of their conversation in one of the pod moments with them, because Patrick tells Aanu on that same subject that he doesn't agree that people need to play to what society says they need to be, which is humble and not arrogant. Instead, he said that, you should be prideful and stuff, and pride does cometh before the fall. So I was side-eyeing him heavy, and so was Aanu. And then they continue getting deeper in conversation with one another, where Patrick asks Aanu how she'd feel if her family rejected him. And Aanu says, well, if my mom says no, I'm riding with mom. And Patrick is like, bro, what? If my family rejected you, I would not side with them. And to a degree here, listen, there's nuance to every situation, right? So depending on why the family's disagreeing with it, you got to weigh that, because sometimes families say no and they're totally in the wrong, correct? Like they say things and it's like, nah, you can discern right from wrong. But again, discernment, that's one thing Patrick doesn't have currently, because he doesn't discern from the Holy Spirit. That's what I'm saying here. So Aanu, I'm like, Aanu, come on, catch on here, Aanu. You're not, the warning signs are there. The yellow flags, because there's like, green, yellow, and red flag. There's a yellow flag, and it's been waving for a while. And then Patrick sort of disses Aanu and says, well, again, I wouldn't care about my family's opinion because people-pleasing is a low vibration. And Aanu straight up says, listen, I don't think we're in alignment. Like, what was that? And I agree, because that is definitely a low blow to a degree. He's telling her that she's, I don't know, what is a low vibration, bro? Again, he continues to go back on the fact that he's like, well, I got to take some time to think. I got to listen to my spleen. This man has said spleen so many times that if I had $1 for every time he said spleen, I'm feeding the block, okay? It's crazy. So Patrick tells Aanu again, hey, the next step in my mind is a proposal. And Anu's sitting there with a mouthful of sushi when this happens, and it's hilarious. She's like, what was that? Had a little tuna stuck in there. What? You said proposal? I'm not there yet. That's what she was saying, but she wasn't saying it. And then Patrick asks Aanu once again to sing to him. And I'm so tired of this man. At this point, I'm over him, because I don't like when men do that. Like when women have talents and abilities and, they say like, oh, can you do this for me? Can you sing for me? You're a classically trained dancer. Can you dance? Like, no, what are they? Like your puppets? Stop it. Like, bro, oh my gosh. Like, what can you do, bro, for her? Aanu then begins to say, I'm really confused. And Patrick reveals in a testimonial interview not too long after that he thinks the connection is gone. So after all that, you would think, I've got no more notes for Patrick and Aanu. They're done. You would be wrong, because Aanu is in the women's living quarters and writing a song for Patrick. Aanu, how badly do you want to be on this show at this point? Because no, he is not for you. So they get in the pods and they do one final date, because Aanu asks Patrick, hey, you want to hear the song? He hesitates and actually doesn't give an answer and says, no, I don't want you to sing for me. Patrick is the one to then walk away and say, Aanu, I'm over this. I'm done. The connection is over. And Aanu, don't be upset, because he did you a huge favor. So we're going from spleen instincts to Sarover and Kal, who have like 4 lines of notes for me. They don't have much in the pods. It really just goes from I'm interested to a sort of interesting conversation that they cut away from fast and to the proposal. But there was, in my mind, always a potential match between those two. And Kal and Sarover had at least a little tiff, not a tiff, but there was a bit of a conflict point, because they were talking about their thoughts on mixed races, dating, and maybe one day getting married, right? Because they're Indian and Pakistani. So there is conflict between those countries, and there's a whole history there, but they didn't have any issues with it. And Kal was already calling her princess. And I'm thinking here, okay, here we go. They're about to probably get engaged. And yeah. Well, before we get to the proposal moments, we need to get into the love triangles, because we got 2 in Love is Blind season 2. So we're going to start with the very first love triangle, which almost got a little spicy. So we've got Kieran, Sophie, and Megan basically all vying for one another. So we'll start with Sophie and Kieran. Kieran is a gaming entrepreneur. I guess he's in the esports field. I don't know. But both are making each other laugh at the start. So I thought, oh, yeah, they have a good connection here. So it seemed pleasant. Sophie immediately, though, jumps the gun and says, I think I just found my husband right after their first pod date. Girl, I know the flash is quick, but you're quicker. My goodness, what the heck? That's so fast. And they maybe had 1 or 2 more pod dates that we saw on TV, but it just felt like things were pretty surface level between those two. However, in the actual women's living quarters, we learn that it's not just Sophie that Kieran's interested in. It was Megan. And we'll get into their moments in the pods, but if we want to fast forward a little bit, the women in the quarters were flipping out once Kieran gave Megan a gift and sprayed, they said aftershave, but I'm guessing that's cologne. I'm learning a lot of these different terminologies here. And Sophie was super upset and felt it was really disrespectful. So Sophie gets in the pods with Kieran and says, hey, your gift to Megan was really disrespectful to me. And they were not having a pleasant conversation. Sophie walks out of their pod date, and then that's when she's upset. And this is because Kieran said, I've made a stronger connection. Sorry, girl. And Sophie says, forget it. Take this mic off me. I don't want it. And leaves Love is Blind. So that's the end of Sophie and Kieran. So let's move on to Megan and Kieran. I am shocked that Kieran was such a hot commodity, but hey, Megan seems to be vibing. Kieran seems to be vibing with one another, and well, it's working out, even though at first it almost didn't, because Megan was like, you're a gamer? You play video games? And then she heard gaming entrepreneur and thought, oh, okay, you make money from this? But their physical chemistry through the wall, as weird as that sounds, began to develop, and they started talking a lot about it. But finally, we get something below the surface, and Kieran begins talking about his broken family background. And honestly, I low-key like them together so far. They seem good, at least to me. And Kieran tells Megan that, I want to do the rest of this journey with you, Megan, only. So then, if I'm not mistaken, it's Kieran that reads a poem to Megan, but poems are a thing in Love is Blind UK as well, right? We got poems in Love is Blind US and songs. Here we are. So as you can tell, they're hitting it off. So I want to move on to the second love triangle now between Katisha, Javen, and Damola. And things are heating up, y'all, because Javen and Katisha and Damola, man, they are, that's a messy triangle, at least the messiest one we've had this season. Javen played for Crystal Palace, and I'm a Manchester United fan, so let's go Reds. But the thing is, yeah, Javen doesn't play for them anymore, if I'm not mistaken, so he's on the show looking for love. They do have a little something going on immediately, and Katisha says Javen sounds like her usual type. But Javen, he got an inch and he went a mile with it, because he's starting to ask Katisha about like physical chemistry and like how many times would you like to do things? And I'm thinking, bruh, you're really jumping the gun here. But then Katisha wants to talk more about their actual connection and asks Javen, how do you feel? So Javen says, what will be, will be. And I'm thinking, boy, bye at this point. Like, if you really think is that how you're going to fight for her? Even though I know that Javen also knows, hey, there's a little bit of a connection with Damola at this time. But still, if you knew that, why aren't you going to fight for her? He does reveal he doesn't trust easily, but I don't know if that's much of an excuse. So when Katisha explains to Javen, like, I don't know, my other connection tries more than you. Javen's like, okay, hold on, I can get flowers. That's always, I don't know why men do that. It's always like the number one thing. I mean, flowers are beautiful, don't get me wrong, but it's always like someone shouldn't like force you to do that. You know what I mean? And it's funny when this happened, because this was when Katisha was prepared to tell Javen, I'm done with you, until she saw the flowers. So Javen reads her his notes after she says she's moving on, and Katisha says, well, after all that, I'm unsure. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Katisha's kind of torn between the two. But there's context here that matters, because now we're going to move on to Damola and Katisha. Katisha seems, honestly, at this point, really kind and sincere. But it was the whole ending of this love triangle that made me not really like Katisha and Javen too much anymore. Damola seems to be spilling his heart out often in the pods to Katisha, but she's not bought all the way into these moments because of her other connection, it seems. But then in a surprise turn of events, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, Damola and Katisha are ready to go forward because Katisha tells Damola, my decision's made, it's you, right? I'm riding with you. I'm gonna tell my other connection is over. You would think. Katisha is not a woman of her word because after the whole flower gift from Javen, she decides to go with Javen and actually dump Damola. After all that, Katisha, that's bad. That's snakish behavior. I hate to say it because Damola, you told him, I'm with you. I'm riding with you till the end of this conversation, apparently, because she changed her mind quick after that because, come on. So Damola's clearly upset, but he did the right thing. He was professional, mature, and said, this is where it ends with us. We're done talking. Goodbye. And walks out. He was happy for Javen, don't get me wrong, but I can understand why Damola's upset, and I'm riding with Damola in this instance. So after all those pod moments, let's talk about who got down on one knee and who's engaged. We're going to start with, of course, the obvious, Billy and Ashleigh. Ashleigh says yes, and in the reveal, there wasn't really much to talk about. I would like to move on if that's okay. Okay? Alrighty. So we're moving on to Kal and Sarover, and yeah, Sarover says yes, of course, and Kal, I hate to say it like this though, during their proposal moment, when they were in person, he sounded really monotone. Is that just me? But he did sound really monotone, almost like he wasn't all the way into it, but I don't want to assume. So we'll see what happens in week 2, but so far I was like, yeah, this man's he's not bought in. I am proud of him for getting down on one knee, in the correct knee, because finally a guy gets it right. And then when it comes to Megan and Kieran, they're so bubbly and they're jumping on each other and stuff. And, you know, in my opinion, I think Sophie did a good job with leaving the pods early because I can only imagine the drama if she was there and Megan walks in and says, I'm a fiance. He put a ring on it. Yeah, that would not be good for Sophie and possibly for Megan. But during their moment where the reveal moment, they get together, you know, Megan does reveal that she hasn't said I love you yet. They seem smitten by each other, but it is weird that she hasn't said that yet. I mean, y'all are actually engaged. It's not good. And then there's Jed and Barda, who I know we didn't talk about much in the pod moments, but that's because there wasn't much to talk about. They were just really happy that they were together. Jed is got it from a big family background, so was Barda. I'm going to be honest, they really didn't have many notable moments in the pods. It just sort of kind of naturally happened that they got together. And yeah, they decided to get engaged. And lastly, this couple gets engaged, Javen and Katisha. I don't know. Something is still off. Even during the reveal, I'm thinking, what's going on here, huh? I don't know. I just don't like how it played out with them. And with the whole Damola thing, it turned me off completely. Alrighty, y'all, so now it's time to head to Cyprus for the couple's getaway. And listen, I am half Greek. I've been to Greece, been to Santorini, and mamma mia. When I tell you, Cyprus is basically a Greek island, I know it's not, but still. I mean, it looks so similar to what I saw in Santorini, but man, Cyprus looks beautiful, and the getaway location here is 10 times better than Love is Blind US. They've been to Mexico, not saying Mexico's not beautiful, but Cyprus, like, I don't know, Love is Blind US, y'all better start sending these people to the Maldives. The only notes I have from their introductions into their rooms is really from Javen and Katisha and Kal and Sarover. Javen did tell Katisha, I can't tell you I'm in love with you yet, which adds to my suspicions if they're really in it for each other. And Javen says that on night 1 they didn't sleep much. It's always the guys that are like inferring this stuff. What are we doing here, huh? And then with Kal and Sarover, Kal tells Sarover, hey, you know, usually in the real world you're not my type, and I usually go with white and blonde British girls. And I'm like, wow, Kal, that's one thing to tell your fiance. What are we doing here? Sarover in the testimonial interview says, I'm starting to feel some type of way, and there are 2 other contestants that are white and blonde and British. So yeah, Kal, major L. Alrighty, so the final thing to recap is the couples meetup that always happens in Love is Blind getaways. So Kal and Barda, of course, see each other, and Kal reaffirms in his testimonial interview that, yeah, Barda's who I'd go for in the real world. Hey, Kal, here's some word of advice from me to you. You should probably stop talking about someone who's not your fiance like that. you should probably talk more about your fiance. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. And then Megan and Katisha, they joined the party and they're wearing the same green swimwear. I guess they got the same stylist. But it seems like now we're starting to get into the conversations at this point, right? So Ashleigh's talking to Barda and saying that she thinks Javen and Katisha need to do more exploring because something's not right there. And you know what, Ashleigh? I think your intuition's correct. And Ashleigh finds herself in another conversation with a contestant. This time it's Sarover. So I guess Ashleigh is like the group's therapist. There's always that one contestant that's in every conversation. But Sarover is basically saying, hey, I've struggled with self-sabotaging myself and everything, and I'm insecure. So it doesn't help that Kal is sitting with Barda at the pool right now. So Sarover comes to sit in between Barda and Kal like a boss. And Kal says exactly what he shouldn't say. Because Barda's like, oh, I can leave now. And Kal is like, actually, you can stay. You dummy. What are we doing here? God forgive me, but what are we doing here, man? That is so idiotic of you to do. Because what does Sarover feel like? Of course, her body language immediately showed, shoot, really? My man doesn't want another girl to leave? Who's like not his fiance? Who I'm insecure about him being with anyway? Around or whatever? Oh, what a mess. And then we get left on a cliffhanger because Kal and Katisha sit down together and Kal reveals that I'm not happy with you, Katisha. And it's because of the whole Damola situation. So Kal and Damola must have been tighter than we thought because he's going in, especially on the coming up next week reel. I mean, the guys are not happy with Javen and clearly not happy with Katisha. And the girls probably don't even care, to be honest with you. But I'm curious, do any of the women disagree with Katisha? Or agree? I don't know. But it's going to be really interesting to see next week's batch of episodes because that's it for week 1, guys. Again, not as dramatic as you're used to, I'm sure, from Love is Blind US, but Love is Blind UK did have some takeaways towards the end of this batch of episodes. So if you don't want to miss out on my recap and review next week, hit the big red button below, subscribe to the channel, tap on that bell, y'all. Like this video if you haven't, and let me know in the comments which couple's your favorite and which one is not. I've got my least favorite to favorite list already. We'll see how that shapes up for week 2. Alrighty, y'all. Well, again, thanks so much for watching. God bless you guys, and I'll catch you at the next screening. And if I hear someone talk about their spleen one more time,